to him is Barbara Cambridge, a member of the English faculty at IUPUI in Indianapolis. My immediate left, Linda Ferries, a newspaper person from Kokomo, Indiana. And to my right, Jody Banks, a student member, a member of the student body of Purdue University and a native of Fort Wayne. And on behalf of the Commission and on behalf of you folks in the audience, we want to welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. I've been asked by my colleagues to open what we believe is an historic budget presentation insofar as we can determine this is the first time that all 7 of Indiana's public institutions of higher education are united in presenting a common set of goals and have tied their budget presentations to those common goals. With me today are my colleagues who you just introduced. Our intent is to take about half of the time allotted to us and then, as Mr. Bauer indicated, leave time for your comments and questions. Let me begin by sharing with you an analysis of the state of higher education in Indiana that appeared just last week, in the Chronicle of Higher Education. I'm quoting from the Chronicle. Although Indiana has many respected public universities, it has historically lagged behind other states in the proportion of high school graduates who attend college. In northern Indiana, in particular, where the economy has been dominated by automobile-related industries, residents traditionally have not needed a college degree to find well-paying jobs. But declines in the auto industry have changed that picture in recent years, and state officials have been trying to encourage more people to attend college. Like the governors of other Rust Belt states, Governor Bayh says Indiana's economic health is linked to higher education. He has called for increased financing for public colleges and universities. The 7 of us sitting before you today could not agree more. We must collectively do better, and we will do better. We've been at work during the past year to present to the state a budget request that reflects our common concerns for Indiana citizens and their future. And you have a document detailing this budget request from each of our institutions. But our concerns are not limited to the 1991-93 biennium. Our concerns are for the state's colleges and universities in the longer term, for the year 2000 and beyond. We believe we can no longer afford to focus on the short term. The larger, more pressing question is, will we still be competitive in the next 10 or 20 years? The people of Indiana deserve to know. Will their children and grandchildren have access to the higher education they need to compete in the complex world of the 21st century? Will their children and grandchildren be guaranteed a quality education once they get to the college level? Will their children and grandchildren receive the kind of personal attention and support they need to achieve success, to complete their degrees? The answer must be yes to these questions because brain power is taking the place of labor as the critical ingredient in our economy. It will be brain power, the ability to gather and organize information, to think critically, to use computers in solving problems, and the ability to communicate that will determine the individual's capacity to earn a living in the next century. For Indiana to have a healthy economy, the state must provide an environment where brain power, the central and critical resource, has been developed to its fullest potential. In the business world, good management means being competitive, being mean and lean. Universities, too, must be competitive, not with each other, for that only weakens the state's ability to compete, but rather by identifying their niche and providing the best service to Indiana as a whole. Universities can no longer be all things to all people. The Commission for Higher Education is to be complimented for its vision and leadership in providing Indiana citizens with 7 diverse and distinctive institutions. Some of our universities focus resources on world-class research, some on undergraduate teaching, and some on vocational training and 2-year technical programs. But together, we must provide each of these services. Together, we will. We'll do it by managing in the most efficient way possible the resources provided us. My colleagues would like to highlight some of the many things we do to be effective managers of the state's resources. President Ehrlich?
Thank you, John, and thank you, members of the Commission. We welcome you here at Indiana University. 2 years ago, I presented to you a budget request that was based on
faculty and staff. Our faculty teach 15 credit hours or 22 contact hours. They are expected to advise students. They're expected to provide individualized attention. They're expected to give campus service and community service. We're a teaching institution to President Landini.
Well, you should. Thank you, Phil. And Mr. Chairman, may I express, as a first order of business, at least from Indiana State University, the fact that we're pleased by the opportunity to address the Commission for Higher Education and the needs specifically of Indiana State University. And President Ehrlich, it's a pleasure always to be on your campus, and especially now when I'm not paying tuition for a couple of my sons. And the cookies in the cafeteria are extraordinary. They're just quite tasty. My job of work is to address one specific subject. It may or may not, what I'm about to say, obtain at other institutions, but I rather suspect that it carries my presentation the flavor, if not the fact, that will apply to our 6 sister institutions. Each year, for the last several years, Indiana State University has husbanded institutional financial resources and turned them to faculty and staff salaries, to the support of those salaries. The resources are gleaned from faculty positions and staff lines vacated by retirements, resignations, mortality, reassignments. Decisions on the positions that are to be filled immediately, those other and different positions which are to be filled at later times, positions which are to be filled by part-time staff, and those positions which are not to be filled now or even later, so far as we are able to gauge the immediate future. Those decisions are based, the faculty has remained the same, or very nearly the same. However, the number of full-time faculty members has diminished, and that diminishment is a concomitant or the result of an increase in part-time appointments and a slightly expanded use of teaching assistants. Until a few years ago, the university was able to replace. That is still true, but it is true in an ever decreasing number of departments and academic units. So much so that I am probably admonished by my colleagues and the several deaneries on the campus to be very circumspect and chary about citing that, how true it remains. The opposite may now be more true than what I have just asserted. In point of fact, the replacement of a retiree in some disciplines may cost more than the salary paid to the retiree, even though the newcomer.
Retroactive changes to this agreed-upon approach will result in a reduction of institutional service to students. A declining level of education offered to students is not in Indiana's best interest. Again, the crucial question is, what kind of universities will our grandchildren attend? The answer to that question is at the heart of our commitment to quality. The leaders of our public colleges and universities are firmly agreed that Indiana higher education must maintain the standard of quality in teaching and research for which it's now recognized, must be even more accessible to Hoosiers, must ensure the success of all students. In short, we must provide the skilled and educated workforce for the state to be economically competitive. But the fact is, we are behind other states in appropriations for comparable institutions. Particularly, we're behind in faculty salaries. If the next generation of Hoosiers is to prosper from quality higher education, we must close the
advancement program. As I mentioned earlier, how important this program is. Last year, we served over 15,000 students in our basic skills. 15,000. I remind you that these are primarily adult students. Over 52% of our students last year were over 30 years of age. One way we served those students were in the audience last year when we showed this demonstration at our Kokomo campus. We cannot keep up with this demand for interactive video systems We need support of this, primarily at our campuses, but also out in the community and the workplace, in pilot projects to help improve workplace literacy. Projects that we're working with the AFL-CIO, businesses and industries in this state, to address not only training the workforce for better jobs or better income, but more of a crisis to keep them in a job in the future. We want to expand the skills area which students can pursue by using this system in subjects ranging from GED preparation and English as a second language to chemistry and electronics. With additional support for this promising educational technology, we'll be able to serve more students in more places with their basic skills. Another area with
these other programs. These are very difficult times in which we live. Our president addressed the nation a few nights ago in an eloquent discussion of the international situation, and I was pleased that he also added to it the domestic dimension of our budget in Washington. These are times that have seen more changes in a few short months than have occurred in most of our lifetimes. And there was one change which I want to call to your attention, which occurred in Czechoslovakia not too many months ago, when a gentleman who made his living as a stagehand and as a sometime playwright and poet ascended to the presidency of his nation. Václav Havel, on the eve of his inauguration, posed three pertinent and sensitive and very penetrating questions. He said, first of all, what kind of place is this? Secondly, what are the principles that bind us together? And third, what can we contribute to our nation and the world? It is these kinds of questions that preoccupied the seven of us in the months leading up to the decision to put together all of our energies to tell the story of higher education throughout the state. And we will answer these questions like this. What kind of place is this? This is our home. This is Indiana. This is the heartland. This is where we have grown up. This is where we work. This is where our future lies. And what are the principles that bind us together? It's our history, our tradition, our shared values, our proud accomplishments. And most importantly, there's a way that we Hoosiers do things. We don't look to Washington or to Europe to bail us out when we have trouble. We are still the frontiersmen of America. We do things for ourselves, and we do it in partnership. And so we decided that the unique thing that we could contribute is to show you that we, institutions of higher education, have abandoned whatever differences we might have had, except on the gridiron and on the basketball floor, and that we are presenting to you a united front, giving to you the experience of our faculties, the accomplishments of our alumni, the resources of our institutions, which are indeed of national and international significance, and trying to address together and inviting you in partnership with us these pressing problems that are going to be with us for the rest of the decade of this century. There are certain common themes in our presentations today. We want to serve our state, each in our own diversity and our own strength. We want to empower our students, who are our most important constituency. They are the future. We want to assist our communities, not just in economic competitiveness by encouraging small business and giving technological support, but importantly by teaching people to read and write in the 3 R's and reaching out to K through 12 and making available the kinds of expertise that we have in math and science, for example, to enhance the youngsters of today who will be the citizen leaders of tomorrow.
The purpose of our Access initiatives is to ensure that more Hoosier citizens have the opportunity for a college education, with special emphasis on minority and non-traditional students. The minority access funds that we received for the current biennium have supported very important programs for minority students, as do what I call the efficiency funds, dollars saved by operating more productively on every campus. There's one final but essential element in ensuring success, and that's the need to maintain our facilities, the necessary space for learning and for teaching. I cannot stress too strongly the importance of state support for the required maintenance of existing facilities. Through full funding for repairs and rehabilitation, as well as for infrastructure support. Otherwise, all the buildings around you here today on every campus cannot be maintained. The medical science building in Indianapolis, as many of you have seen firsthand, is our highest capital project priority because it must be renovated as well as expanded if essential teaching, essential research is going to continue. Another area of special concern, those students whom, as President Bering indicated, I term the new majority, returning older students pursuing undergraduate degrees. By a small margin, those students are indeed a majority among Indiana University's 90,000 students. They are most often wage earners with families, commuting students who attend school part-time. Meeting the needs of that new majority calls for reshaping the traditional mold of undergraduate education, in our view. And last April, I met with chancellors from all our campuses to begin that process, and a draft paper about our efforts to serve better the new majority is now being reviewed by faculty members. I will shortly send each commission member a copy for your comments, for your suggestions.